Welcome to the Country Watch Political Intelligence Briefing Quick Hits, a weekly briefing of hot stories across the world in brief. I'm Denise Youngblood Coleman, the Chief Editorial Officer and Senior International Affairs Analyst at Country Watch. This week I'm focused on the crisis on the border with Ukraine. In the last week, there were vigorous efforts by NATO countries, particularly the United States, the United Kingdom, Germany and France particularly, to avert a military confrontation in Eastern Europe. Those diplomatic efforts produced mixed messages, with Russian President Vladimir Putin thanking French President Emmanuel Macron for coming to Moscow for talks, and with Macron indicating that Putin gave assurances that there would be no invasion of Ukraine. That message was then contradicted by the Kremlin. The lack of clarity on the diplomatic front from both the Kremlin and the Élysée Palace came at a time when the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff in the United States, General Mark Milley, said in a briefing to U.S. lawmakers on Capitol Hill that Kyiv could fall within 72 hours should a full-scale Russian invasion of Ukraine ensue. Milley's remarks included warnings of up to 15,000 Ukrainian troop deaths and 4,000 Russian troop deaths should such an invasion take place. Other assessments pointed to tens of thousands of civilian casualties. In addition, there would be a humanitarian crisis with a flow of up to 5 million refugees across the border, quite likely destined for Poland. The cost of a Russian invasion of Ukraine would not only be at the humanitarian level, there would be manifold damage to the Ukrainian economy. There would also be geostrategic consequences for Russia, with the West retaliating by blocking the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. Pentagon Press Secretary John Kirby signaled the alarm about the potential threat Ukraine faced by Russia in a press briefing. Kirby, the press secretary for the Pentagon, as I mentioned, said that the United States believed that Russia could create a pretext to invade Ukraine. One option was that the Russian government could stage a fake attack by Ukraine against Russian-speaking peoples to justify their actions. The United States was publicizing these possible tactics that Russia could employ as a means to deter and dissuade Russia from carrying forth this course of action. By February 11, 2022, the landscape had shifted as United States National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan took to the podium at the daily press briefing at the White House to issue a stark warning about the crisis in Ukraine. The National Security Advisor said that the United States believed that the Russian President Vladimir Putin could order an invasion of Ukraine at any time. The National Security Advisor added that Putin would be undeterred by the Beijing Olympics and could order that invasion before the end of the Games of the Olympiad on February 20, 2022. National Security Advisor Sullivan emphasized that a prospective Russian invasion of Ukraine could commence with an air assault. National Security Advisor Sullivan also urged Americans in Ukraine to depart the country within 24 to 48 hours. He warned of the risk they incurred in remaining in Ukraine, saying, "If you stay, you are assuming risk with no guarantee that there will be any other opportunity to leave and no prospect of a U.S. military evacuation." Among National Security Advisor Sullivan's sobering assertion was that Russia could take significant Ukrainian territory. That being said, taking control of foreign territory was not the same as occupying foreign territory. It was thus unclear what type of landscape would transpire in the event of that type of invasion of Ukraine. The only good news coming out of this press briefing was that Sullivan said that the United States was prepared for all possibilities. He declared, "We're ready either way." When the National Security Advisor referenced the readiness factor, it was not in conjunction with the United States or NATO forces going to war with Russia over Ukraine. It was fixed on the central goal of defending NATO allies in the region of Eastern Europe. The message by NATO to Russia was clear. NATO countries were vigorously working on a diplomatic end to resolve the Ukrainian crisis. Nonetheless, NATO countries were also preparing for the end of the diplomatic arc and the start of a potential military arc. For NATO countries, the notion of being compelled to dismantle their security architecture remained a non-starter. Some of the other countries or stories that I'm covering this week include the attempted coup d'etat in Guinea-Bissau and the probe into it. In Canada, the mayor of the capital city of Ottawa announced a state of emergency in response to massive truckers' protests against COVID measures. One story I'll be coming back to in the future is North Korea's intercontinental ballistic missile program. This week, analysts at the Center for Strategic and International Studies said that they had located an underground military base in North Korea a mere 15 miles from the border with China. The analysts concluded that the Hojungni base was being used to house North Korean intercontinental ballistic missiles, ICBMs. The strategic location was very likely intended to deter a preemptive strike. This Hojungni facility is not the first possible ICBM base in North Korea identified by analysts at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. In 2019, they identified the Usangni base, located less than 40 miles from Pyongyang. With China hosting the Winter Olympics in Beijing, it was unlikely that North Korea would carry out any provocative actions in the month of February 2022. That being said, certain measures geared towards an ICBM test were anticipated in the future. The last North Korean ICBM test ensued in late 2017 and came with the claim that a North Korean nuclearized ICBM could strike the mainland United States. And in the United Kingdom, Queen Elizabeth II marked 7 decades on the British throne. At 95 years of age, she is Britain's longest-serving monarch. She announced that the wife of her heir, Prince Charles, would be known as the Queen Consort. In this way, when Charles is crowned as king, his wife would be crowned Queen Camilla. Subscribers can read more about these and other stories at the Country Watch website at www.countrywatch.com. I'd also like to take this time to mention my comprehensive Afghanistan withdrawal report called Sunset in the Graveyard of Empires, which will be available for purchase from the Country Watch website at www.countrywatch.com. Thank you for your time. Have a great day, and remember now, more than ever, we live in an interconnected world.